Welcome back to the Morning Exchange. It's 61 degrees and sunny. And for those of you just joining us, let us tell you what's coming up today in the 9 o'clock hour of the show. And we're going to talk with actor Patrick MacNee about his international success as John Steed on the Avengers, his many stage and film roles, and his rather unusual childhood and how it's affected him as an adult.
Yeah, we'll also find out what happened to the car. Everybody wants to know what happened to Steed's car. You'll also meet...
Show the Avengers.
I watched it all the time. I love it.
I loved it. I wanted to be Emma Peel, and I am so delighted to welcome today Patrick MacNee. The Avenger returns, and he's written a book about his life called...
Blind in One Ear.
No, that's not the way you said it before.
Oh, Blend in One Ear.
Blend in One Ear.
Blend in One Ear.
It's as mad, the interpretation of it, as the title. So you said that it had affected me as an adult. I like to think, people say with that childhood, it's amazing, and I've said, it's amazing I've grown up so normal. And you see a sort of rather straight, yes, look, just like that in their eyes. So,
where did this title come from?
Well, obviously it's a misnomer and a malapropism. The person said about a little duck and her ducklings, the poor thing, we're very indulgent to her because she's blind in one ear. Well, they obviously meant deaf in one ear. And it kind of symbolises the fact that unfortunately through one's life, which one has plummeted through to one's present 67th year, by really not liking to say, oh, but surely you mean deaf? I mean, if only I'd said that occasionally, I would have landed less in the morass.
Your childhood was stranger than fiction. Can you tell us a bit about your family?
I wish it had been fiction, basically. Well, I'll tell you just a little bit, because a lot of people say, of course you made that up, they say, quite sharply. But you can't make up the fact. And my mother was a great lady. She died 2 years ago at the age of 95. And in her younger years, she was married to my father. There was a very small man called Shrimp MacNee. He was a great racehorse trainer. And she also had a delightful affair with a very tall racehorse trainer called Ozzie Bell. They lived 3 miles away from whom she had my brother. But she actually lived with her female, Evelyn, with her female lover. So but they all lived within about 9 miles of each other. So she lived with her female lover, came down the road to have a nice early evening drink with Shrimp, usually having me in tow wearing a kilt, because in the household that we lived in, there were only women and they wouldn't have men at all. So as my mother was much loved and a member of the harem, and she wanted to bring me, I had to dress. As I say, it is extraordinary that I haven't grown up more peculiar than I am. And then she would visit her lover and go back to her female lover at the end of the day. And I think that was a remarkable accomplishment.
Today we call that broad-minded.
That's exactly. She widened her sort of plateau of experience.
What did you think about all of this as a child?
Well, one never does, you know, as a child. And very cleverly, and in English education in those days, you could get away with it. When you did all that, you sent your child away at the age of 5 to a boarding school. Now, it's not a very big island, say 200 miles away, and you say, don't come back, darling, till you're 17. You then come back and they say, oh, by the way, you're just back, we're all going to fight the Germans. Put the uniform on, lead the men over the top, and you'll all be dead, and we won't have the problem anymore at all. That's the way they solve it, but of course the effect on a child is quite disastrous.
Yeah. How about your father? What was he like?
Poor little man. He drank an enormous amount of gin. He used to send me out every day, and he said, go on, son, get me my medicine. And it was gin, which used to buy at the chemist at that time. And he filled his tiny belly out fuller and fuller and fuller, and doing, nuffed it.
Did you become an actor to escape all this, or somehow try to deal with it?
Well, I think so. I did my best acting way before I was 10 years old. I played Henry V at the age of 8, uncut, which is quite extraordinary, and I've gone steadily downhill ever since.
Now, you went to school at Eton?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, what were those years like, and what were the circumstances surrounding your exit from that school?
Well, the thing about Eton, you know, is that it, of course, is probably the finest school in the world, highest rate of teaching, and really it's a university, but unfortunately you're only age 12 to 18, in which, of course, as you know, the population has to be multiplied, and that's the time the good God gives you the greatest rate of sexuality. Now, if you're in a same-sex school boarding, and you haven't got women, you can guess the consequences, but you learn an awful lot of intellectual work, but it doesn't really equip you for... I suddenly saw my wife for the first time with no clothes on, and I married her because the excitement was too much. I'd never seen one before.
But you have a great story to tell, though, about how you left that school.
Yes, but I don't like talking about that. Do you like when you've been expelled from places, given the reason?
What was the reason?
Well, 2 reasons. I ran a very successful bookmaking establishment and made a great deal of money until I was... And they always used to flog you in those days, you know. Corporal punishment, thank goodness, is a thing of the past. And also I ran a beautiful bookshop with some of the best pornography that you've ever seen. All purloined from the British Museum. Now, I love the hypocrisy of the English. How dare you have that filthy book? But in fact, the only place to get it is in the British Museum, which houses Renoirs and Degas and all the best paintings. You can't have it both ways. Anyway, I was fired, flogged, and banished for those two offences. I hadn't even assaulted a member of the opposite sex at that time, or even the same sex.
How old were you then?
Oh, all of 17. But they said, you're just ready for the Germans. Off and fight. So I spent the whole of the war in the Channel and North Sea and prefer to forget it. I was a fine commander, though. Oh, incidentally, Di Rigg, who is a famous actress now and was in the Avengers, Her Majesty just gave her the Commander of the British Empire, CBE. So her husband and daughter ran up the stairs calling her Commander.
Well, when did you become a professional actor, and how did that come about?
Oh, professional? 17. Because all the other people had gone to the war, so I got a lot of good parts, and I've worked everything. I think I'm in 5 movies. I'm playing with Mrs. Burt Reynolds on October the 11th on the USA Channel in Sorry, Wrong Number. Do you remember that,
sure.
Barbara Sandwich?
Great movie.
Oh, yeah, I'm with dear, lovely MacLeod, Dennis Weaver. He rides his horse around Trafalgar Square. I play the villain who tries to trip him up.
One of the things I loved about the Avengers, and a lot of the old black and white ones, the first ones I guess were black and white. Yeah. I think they're still playing on one of the UHF stations around here.
Oh, I hope so, because I think that's one of the reasons I've come here. I hope to meet people who actually see it.
But you and Mrs. Peel, we sat back and we would watch those and we say, are they or aren't they? You know, do they do it or don't they do it? And it was that element of kind of subdued sexuality in there that was so appealing. It was nothing blatant or obvious about it, and I think that was one of the reasons that program was so successful.
Well, Bruce Willis said the other day, you know. No, well, he said that moonlighting came to an end when they did it.
Yeah.
I think you just must not do it, and then you can stay on the air for years.
Now, that was part of the evolution of that series. When the concept first began, you as the Avenger, you were working with another actor.
Oh, very serious. He was a doctor, and we were avenging terrible crimes against the state.
What was it called at that time?
It was called The Avengers. Well, originally it was called Police Surgeon.
Yes.
He was a great star, Ian Hendry, and he's dead now, unfortunately, for the same reason, for many reasons. By the way, most of my friends are dead in their 50s. I'm only alive because I stopped drinking and smoking, and that's not a virtue. I just pass it on for anyone who might want to get into their 60th decade. The show started with 2 men, and then the man left, and they had all these scripts, so they said, oh, let's have a woman. So they did, and Honor Blackman came in, and she had to do exactly the same scripts, and she thought, my goodness. And she paralleled the rise of woman's lib, early 60s, by accident, and put herself in black leather, which of course is a famous sexual fetish, and she was away and throwing men over her shoulder, and lots of girls, yourself included, said, well, oh, I can be just like that. The day I can throw men over my shoulder. All my employers now are women. Every single producer I'm working for at this moment are women, and God bless them.
Those characters really were very much ahead of their time.
Oh, just ahead, which I think was a lucky thing. I think we didn't know it. We were a comic strip telly show, you know. But in fact, as you say, women were deciding, that's enough, let's get into our BMWs and drive everybody else off the road and see that the men keep their place, and right and proper.
How many of those programs were made?
Oh, hundreds. And I know I did it for 9 years. Fortunately, my little toddlers, you know, ever open beak, I educated them, sent them to Princeton. They're now older than me and rather patronizing. All because I was in the event. Before that, I was broke, and 20 years, no one ever known me from a hole in the ground.
We have a clip from one of these shows.
Oh, now that's dangerous.
No.
That must be over a quarter of a century ago.
Well, let's take a look, and we'll get your reaction to this clip from The Avengers. Watch.
Ill-gotten gains, and stranger than that, they were last seen heading for these shores.
My goodness.
Well,
what goes through your mind when you watch
Well, a lot of things. My goodness, 80 pounds lighter, 25 years ago, and, you know, it's very, very painful. It's like looking at baby pictures.
Such wonderful work, though. I mean, it must make you feel good, though.
Well, acting with her, she's one of the great actresses in the world.
Yeah.
She's a beautiful woman.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Still today.
Yeah, and still is, yeah.
We want to hear more about your relationship with Diana Rigg and find out what's happened since
Well, it stayed where it was, I hasten to add.
We will also take your questions for Patrick MacNee at 578-1000.
I mean, they
Stay
never
tuned.
did it. Oh.